Welcome to another guide for Goddess Victory, NIKKE. Nihilister will be coming to the game very soon, and she might already be in the game by the time this video gets released. But before you can start the process of getting her, one of the requirements is that you need to have finished chapter 20 stage 31. So today, whether you are stuck in this level or you are still working towards it, I will be giving you some tips to make this boss fight a lot easier. We will be going over the team that I used to complete this level, and at the same time, I will give you some general tips and share my thought process so that you can apply it in your own teams. But before that, let's talk about combat power. Chapter 20 stage 31 has a recommended combat power of 144,000, but you can definitely complete this with a lot less. The earliest I've seen anyone clear this is using a team with around 123,000 combat power, and for me personally, I cleared this level with around 129,000. But realistically, I would recommend that you aim for at least 125,000 because at that point, the damage penalty is not too extreme. And the closer you get to 130,000, that's when you start to feel like the boss fight is a lot more manageable. Anything less than 120k has little to no chance of clearing stage 31. Moving on, let's go over each character that I used to clear this level. First up, we have Litter. It's no surprise that Litter is a top tier support unit, but she's especially good against Nihilister because her cover HP recovery is actually good enough to the point where you don't need to use a healer if you fight Nihilister properly. So I would say that Litter is definitely a must-have if you want to clear this level early. Next up, we have Modernia. She is a really good DPS unit in general, but she's especially good against Nihilister because Modernia will give you an easier time in taking out Nihilister's projectiles and interruption points. For my next character, I decided to use Privity. Even though Privity is classified as an attacker, she is effectively a support. Her skill 1 is good for Modernia, giving her a good amount of additional attack, and Privity's Burst is a really good ability for taking out all of Nihilister's projectiles during the second phase. Moving on to the next character, we have Guilty. I decided to use her as my secondary damage dealer simply because of how good she is even with low investment. Guilty just deals a ton of damage, and generally speaking, shotgun DPS units are overall really good against Nihilister. And lastly, we have Viper. I will say that she is probably the character that surprised me the most, because unlike the other characters in my team, Viper is by no means a top tier unit. And despite being a no limit break character, she still performed better than the other characters that I have tried out. After looking at this composition, you might have noticed that I'm not using a healer or defender. That's because at the end of the day, chapter 20 stage 31 is basically a DPS check, so you need all the attackers that you can get. I still see a lot of people using Senti in this level, but she's really not that good against Nihilister despite being a top tier unit. For one, her shield can be taken out easily by the meteor and machine gun attacks. Senti's burst is also bad against bosses, and although Senti will provide good energy generation, you simply just lose a lot of damage by using her in your team. But I'm not saying that you can't clear stage 31 if you use Senti. I'm just saying that you will end up needing way more investment if you use her or any defenders in your team. Because I do think that the most optimal team for this fight is a team with no defenders, only one support, 2 or 3 DPS units, and the rest are DPS supports or so-called buffers. There are a lot of factors to consider when it comes to building a team for chapter 20 stage 31, but I found this team format to be the most effective. Covering every single possible team composition will be very time consuming, so if you have any questions for team building for this level, feel free to put it down in the comments below. Moving on, let's talk about upgrade priorities. I would recommend that you hyper invest in one DPS, and I'm specifically talking about the top tier DPS characters. You can refer to Pridewin's tier list because I do think that they have one of the more accurate tier lists, or at least the closest one to mine. You can go for any of the DPS characters on SS tier or above because they are able to contribute close to half of your team's damage. I would say that you can aim for at least level 8 on their skills, and then you can go ahead and upgrade the damage amplifying abilities for your other characters. For my case, after I got Modernia's abilities to a pretty high level, I moved on to upgrading Litter's skill 1 and Burst, and then I started to further upgrade Privity's skill 1. Other skills will have priority over others, so just go for the ones that scale higher and get triggered more often. When it comes to equipment, if you are close to, if not already at chapter 20 stage 31, you most likely are able to full clear the special interception consistently. So I would say that your main goal now is to get as many tier 9 equipment on your characters as possible. Don't spend all of your custom modules on re-rolling stats, but instead, save some for when you get the manufacturer's specific gear. You don't need the best bonuses on your equipment because you are only after the power increase from having a tier 9 piece of gear, so that you can eliminate some of the damage penalty from having a low combat power. But if you happen to get good stats, that is always a plus. Next up, let's move on to the boss itself. The first part is pretty simple. Nihilister will do her meteor attack, so you simply have to shoot it down. During this, you would preferably have your team's burst meter ready because Nihilister's interruption points will start to appear. The interruption points only give you a short amount of time to shoot it down, so you need to pop your burst before they appear. Also keep in mind that the interruption points will appear in a specific pattern. It will either spawn in a circle, and it can also pop up in sort of like an S pattern, so you need to telegraph or predict where the next interruption point will be. Characters like Modernia or any other machine gun units work really well against this, because they will most likely not need to reload during the interruption phase. If you happen to miss one of the interruption points, Nihilister will start to shoot a bunch of projectiles towards your team. You can try to shoot all of them, because I'm pretty sure that it only takes one bullet to break it, but I still recommend that you learn the interruption patterns and do it perfectly. Once you take out all of the interruption points, Nihilister will do her machine gun attack, and she will focus on attacking one random character in 2 separate instances. You obviously need to take cover, but you also need to keep attacking during this phase. So if Nihilister does her machine gun attack, just take cover and use one of your characters to attack so that you're not losing DPS, and at the same time, you are still generating energy for your next full burst. After that, she will start to use her flame attack, and if you did what I told you and kept attacking during the last phase, you should have more than enough time to trigger a full burst before she does her flame attack. It's crucial that you pop your burst during this phase, because there will be a short DPS window where Nihilister is not attacking you, so it's the perfect time to launch your attacks. Popping your burst after she does the flame attack can mess up the timings on your cooldowns, so you might not have your full burst ready by the time you need it for the next interruption phase. With that said, also make sure that you don't get hit by the flame, because it will 100% wipe your team out. For the next part, you will have a good amount of time to fill up your burst meter again, as Nihilister is preparing to launch more projectiles at you. This part is pretty much the same as the first one, where you simply need to shoot down the meteors and interruption points. You basically have to repeat this until her HP goes down to 51 bars and move on to the second phase. Before we move on, I do want to mention that you don't need to stress about breaking her different parts. Her machine gun is pretty tanky, and I don't really see a big difference when breaking the ones on her legs. Additionally, if you are using shotgun DPS units, you would rather aim at the center so that all of your bullets will land. Moving on to the second phase. The second phase is actually pretty simple, because it basically comes down to you being able to dash your flame attacks and being able to take out the different projectiles. I will be showing you a clip during Nihilister's second phase, and I will probably have some notes up on the screen as well. So yeah, that's pretty much everything I have for Nihilister's boss fight. I hope this helps you clear the stage, and if you have any more questions or maybe you have some more useful tips, feel free to put it down in the comments below so that other players can see it. With that being said, don't forget to leave a like, comment, subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.